All right. Is song, Psalm 22. I believe it's going to be clear that Psalm 22 was the first by Jesus. It was the last dreamed of and probably moment his whole life. But through in there about half of that time, very wind had rolled in. Crowds had surrounded him. People had mocked him. He wasn't way up in the air. The people as they walked by the streets, how the Roman intimidation purposes. And some of them, most of the other guys that were hung up there, they were treating him poorly just the same. Only one. His mom was there. Her aunt was there. There was others there. Men and women that had surrounded him while naked to a pulp. And ever since he started, Christ would go through. And he chose to do it in spite of whatever pain. We're going to follow the clue. If you were an investigative reporter, search for a court case, you'd follow the clues. Christians tradition regarding clues, and that's today. People have in their for years, but has come out at Jesus Christ, but he's mistake, and Christianity seems far from religious tradition. Those tar pits, 1.5 million fossils, because it's got those tar pits over, and they just get sucked in. People have. And so what happens is one researcher, the person go to somebody will go one pool and far from that. That's why Christianity should be free state. Yet you can tell a Christian anybody unless they told you or they had around their neck. So here's a few clues to pursue. I want to true Christianity. I want to see what he see, and we're going to see what David saw, and it'll blow. You know, why was Psalm 22 not entirety in the Gospels? Well, he just went, knew it. You know, maybe it was so in the first century just understood. Two people were probably there. They heard this. That day were expected to memorize Psalms and much of the Old Testament. And they knew when to sing them. Remember in Acts 16 when Paul and Silas were thrown in that deep, dark dungeon of a prison, and at midnight, there's probably an exact way in a situation like that. They say we don't understand. Now, maybe you have favorite songs that help you get through the day or get. Well, they did too. They did too. And Matthew and Mark mention the first verse of John mentions the song. Mark set the time of the day. And Jesus hands. Heaven talks about the volume with song there, so that we can talks about we're going to learn about tempo. I think you'll enjoy this. You know, and the word loud in Greek, where it talks about he cried with a loud voice, it's a Greek word megas, and it means loud or great or mighty. So Jesus Christ, he boomed out these final words. So past, present, and future view. And David, the warrior king, who is also a prophet, saw and heard via revelation almost 1,000 Jesus Christ was born. And I'll prove this. It's so obvious. When you can go ahead and turn to Psalm 22 if you'd like. It was both part of Jesus' story at this very same time. And remember what I taught a few years back about spiritual dimension. God has an infinite view. He sees one plane. When he sees Jesus Christ in the future after the resurrection of the just and the unjust, and Adam and Eve. And to him, it's just one flat plane. He sees it all in one picture. Whereas we think of time. You hear a song and you remember your childhood. You see a picture of you think about the time when that happened. You smell a smell and you remember back to the day when you were at the fair, grandma's house. Well, for God, it's all squished into one plane. Easy. So many of the things that happened throughout Jesus' and what happened on the day of his crucifixion were seen in detail by David about one. Because this psalm doesn't just talk about the crucifixion, it talks about his whole life. So it's amazing what God showed David, what Jesus Christ sang, and we'll see why. You're going to get a glimpse of how clearly God can unveil the future. And I think that God could show us just as clearly if we really want to see. If we really want to see. So let's tempo to the, and verse 1, it says, to the chief musician upon Elileth Shahur, a psalm of a psalm is a song, and this was written by David to be sung in an up-tempo fashion. Elijah Shahar, it's not a person's name, but it's a tempo and it's a tune of a song. Elieleth, it's hard for me to say, it means a deer. And Shahar means early morning, and it means a deer in the early morning, a deer at dawn. And the tempo of Psalm 22 is designed to get your heart racing. It's like a deer realizing it's being hunted just as the sun is coming up. You think their heart beats fast? Mm-hmm. You know, this is the tempo of Jesus' victory song, written by a man well acquainted with the tempo of war. And those of you who've been in war or in a situation like that, battle stations, you would know. This is the one who slew Goliath. What do you think? You think his heart was beating when he had to run out after that big old guy? You know, the warrior prophet King David was the guy. I recently received an email from this Trail Runner magazine that sends me stuff unsolicited, and they sent like the top running songs, and at the beat of 170 to 190 beats per minute, which is prime running beat. And you know, I mean, like Tom Petty's "Down a Dream," that's 180 beats a minute, or his "Life is a Highway," you know, 180 beats. Or if you're into to rap, let me see. It feels good to be a gangsta by the Ghetto Boys, 180. Or here, if you like Elvis, Hound Dog, that's 180 beats a minute. So those are prime. Those get you. Those help you keep your pace up, so you can keep your pace up. And so this song was designed to help him keep his mind at a certain energized and exciting pace and place, so that he could fulfill what God wanted him to do. Because one slip up, even hanging on that tree, he could have ruined it. Watch the progression of human thought. And we're going to go from dark introspection to brilliance. From being in the middle of an attack to enjoying our ultimate victory. So human introspection. Why is this happening to me? Now, to ask that question, is it a sin? No. Here's the first verse. Maybe you've heard this before. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? Why art thou so far from helping me, and from the words of my roaring? Now notice how this opening stanza to this song sounds very familiar to what Jesus said just moments before he died. You know, Matthew 27:46 says, and about the ninth hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That's to say, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Now, some of you have been taught a complicated lollipop adaptation of these Aramaic verses. Aramaic words, should I say. Not that they're bad, you know, but let's just follow the clues. Just because you were taught something doesn't mean it's right. Just because you were taught something doesn't mean that you're really that far away from the tar pit. You see? So, you know, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And we think, well, how could Jesus ever say that? Well, now this is a song. Think of it as a song. It starts from human introspection. And it's gonna take him all the way through his life, all the way through the future, until where he has totally obliterated the enemy to the final victory when he says, it is finished. It's not just your salvation that's finished. It's the entirety of human life. And so let's just read what's written. So remember, this is a song. It's designed to take a person from the level of human thinking through the steps of believing and progressing ever upward until deliverance is believed and victory is realized. This will work for us too. The words "my roaring" in that first one, it means a heavy moan, somebody in real pain. They can't keep it in anymore. Jesus was in real agony. David saw it, and David heard it. Imagine in your mind getting the revelation of the Messiah pinned to a post and hearing him cry out in pain. David saw this. Jesus knew he was going to go through it. Verse 2, O my God, I cry in the daytime, but thou hearest not, and in the night season am not silent. I call out in the daytime, I call out at night. Are you listening? Remember, Jesus said, is there any way we can go through this? Is there any other way that this cup can pass? Not going to happen. Not going to happen, God told him. You're going to have to go through this. It's a normal thing. You ever get in a big bad situation? You're like, what's up, God? Why is this happening to me? I don't get it. I've been a good boy. Well, you couldn't have been a better boy than Jesus, right? Think about it. We've all felt like that at times. And I wonder if God, we all wonder if God hears our prayers. Jesus Christ went through the same learning curve. Remember, he was tempted in all points like as we are, yet without sin. He never gave in and blamed God. Jesus was a master at moving through his problems, knowing full well there's always light at the end of the tunnel. I'm telling you, folks, for you, whatever situation you're in, there has to be deliverance. You have to be able to see the end, or you never get there. There has to be hope, or there's no believing. If they can do it, I can do it. Here's the next step. First, it's like, why me? Why me? Now it's, if they can do it, I can. This is the next step in self-talk. Because you start going, okay, that isn't so good, why me? That sounds a bit wimpy. Okay, now, has anyone else on earth ever gone through this problem? And that's sort of where people go next. You see, this is just totally human here. And first we address the problem, and then we set the precedent. I'm in pain. Others have been through similar stuff. If they can do it, I can do it. If they can do it, I can do it. Verse 3, we're in Psalm 22, verse 3. But thou art holy, O thou that inhabitest the praise of Israel. Our fathers trusted in thee. They trusted, and thou didst what? Deliver them. They cried unto thee and were delivered. They trusted in thee and were not confounded. Now, does that sound like a forsaking? You see how he's moving to a different level here. He said, God, you're the center of all praise for Israel. My forefathers trusted in you, and you delivered them each and every time. Now we're going to go to comparing ourselves with others. Psalm 22, verse 6. And this song helps uncover who the Messiah was and what others thought of him. Because that's our next place that we go to. Okay, who am I? What am I really designed to do? What am I going to do with all this information? But now listen to this, verse 6. But I am a worm and no man. Now this was Jesus Christ. This is a song. He was singing this while he's hanging there. I'm a worm and no man, a reproach of men and despise of the people. First, who am I? What's my purpose? And who am I here? This worm isn't a worm like a little thing climbing across a leaf of your favorite plant. You see, when David said concerning the Messiah that he was a worm, it doesn't mean a lowly worm slithering across that leaf. Worm in Hebrew means crimson beetle or scarlet worm. And the worm was used to dye wool red in Bible times. And so the color is more important than the object here. Because crimson is the color of what? Blood. So another thing, what do you think David was seeing here? And now what the beetle does is more important than what it is. When the scarlet beetle, the Coccus silicius, is about to give birth, it climbs onto a tree and it permanently attaches itself. And then it lays its eggs. And they stay with it, and they feed off of that crimson beetle. And then at that point, when it dies, it releases this red dye, and it literally dyes the wood red, or the tree red, and it's young, and so now they become crimson beetles. And it's just funny. And so notice the parallels to Jesus Christ. He allowed himself to be staked to a tree, and he bled out on it. His shed blood's given life to all of us, just like that mother beetle gave her life for their youth. And Jesus, while hanging on that tree, was the color of crimson red. David saw this by revelation. Jesus Christ might have thought, many people are going to reject me, but I will leave an indelible impression on humanity. And has he? Yes. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. It's a dye. They would scrape, they still do this. They harvest this. The same kind of worm as like in Mexico and Arizona. It goes into the cactus, and they scrape that off, and they dye wool, or they dye fabric with that. It's just it works. If you spilled on your hand, it would stain your hand until the skin wore off. So it's pretty good stuff. And so Jesus Christ is indelible. That's how he saw himself. Now, how to withstand a verbal attack. Verse 7, all they that see me laugh me to scorn. Now remember, this is still a song. Laugh me to scorn. And remember, this is also what David saw. He could picture the crucifixion, which we'll get to. And all they that see me laugh me to scorn. They shoot out the lip. They shake their head, saying, he trusted on the Lord that he would deliver him. Let him deliver him, seeing he delighted in him. Remember Matthew 27:39? And those that passed by blasphemed him, wagging their heads. It's the same thing. David saw this. Isn't that crazy? He saw the crowds. And this is 1,000 years before Jesus Christ was crucified. David saw a vivid picture, and he heard what they were saying. So this would someday help the Christ handle this. If you knew a certain type of torture you were going to have to go through, or a very hard task, would it help to, if you'd prepared your mind for it, does it make it a little easier to go through? Yeah. When you prepare yourself. They mocked him. They asked him why God wasn't delivering him. I love it. Jesus was able to picture this harassment in his mind his entire life. He lived out what David saw. Now here's sort of the answer to that when people treat you poorly. Remember who you are, and remember your training. You have to go back to that. Verse 9. But thou art he that took me out of the womb. He's talking about God. Thou didst make me hope when I was upon my mother's breasts. I was cast upon thee from the womb. Thou art my God from my mother's belly. So how long had Jesus Christ been trained in the Word? And who saw this? David. Isn't that crazy? He might have even seen the birth and the words that Mary and Joseph would have told Jesus Christ right when he was born. Isn't that something? Because they gave him to God. They dedicated him to God immediately. Look what David's seeing here. Look what Jesus Christ saw about himself. During times of pressure, people will always revert back to their most ingrained level of training. Your lowest level of training. You always will. When the pressure's on, when you're startled, when you just can't think, you're going to go back to your lowest level of training. It's just the way life is. Jesus Christ trained himself to handle this. Nobody wants to go through that, what he went through. David had to train himself. He was a warrior his whole life. He had to train him. I mean, David one time he fought a bear with his bare hands and a lion when he was a teenager, and Goliath. It's pretty big foes, but he compared them to God, not himself. He believed in his spiritual attributes. And the reason for all problems. Now we're going to this next step. Now you people will start thinking, okay, now why is all this stuff happening to me? First you ask, why me? Now it's like, okay, what's the cause of all these problems? What's the real root of all this? Verse 11, be not far from me, for trouble is near, for there is none to help. In other words, God, I'm glad you're here. You're the only one who can help me through this. And you've said that before. You know, you ask people to pray, but you know it boils down to you. You have to believe. You've got to get through this tough time. Verse 12, many bulls have compassed me. Strong bulls of Bashan have beset me round. See, the bulls of Bashan are free-ranging bulls from east of the Jordan, just east of Galilee in what is now modern-day Syria. And Jesus would have seen these things drinking from the lake and drinking from the Jordan. And a wild bull is much different than a tame one. It's much different. Wild means wild. You see, wild resists restraint, does not want to be under humans' care. You see, wild doesn't get along good with humans. So this was David's mind picture, but I need to explain something before. A truly wild animal can't be tamed. It can be controlled. It might be able to taught to jump out of the water or do some, jump through a hoop of fire, but it's still a wild animal. They can be controlled, but they can't be tamed. Like a horse can be tamed, but its relative, the zebra, can't. In all the history of man, there's only a couple of zebras they've ever trained, and they've been through selective breeding. But generally speaking, they can't be. They're wild. They're a wild animal, even though they can breed with horse and donkey. Isn't that crazy? So, the word strong in that verse is at times used in reference to an angel or to a spiritual being, like strong bulls of Bashan. So what David's seeing here is more than these wild herbivores, you see, and surrounded by a herd of men who are manipulated by devil spirits would be an easy way to say this. Could also represent men born of the seed of the serpent, because you realize these are really words that are hurting. They're the ones who direct things on earth, you see. And men who could never follow the direction of God, good, pureness, or light, or right. And it's interesting to note that Bashan was the land of giant people in Moses' day. So much so that the children of Israel, when they were searching out that land, they said, these people are so big they make us feel like grasshoppers. So the tall people, these biggest people, came from Bashan. And there's one king called Og or Og or Ug. It says that his bed was 13 feet long. His bed. Which is 9 cubits. Goliath was only 6.5 cubits. A cubit is from the elbow to the tip of the fingers. About 18, 20 inches. Every person's cubit is it's not a standard size, but pretty tall. If your bed has to be 13 feet long to hold you, you're a big guy. I think it was 5 or 6 feet wide. So just for that guy's body. So this king was huge, but he was also huge in another way. He was hugely evil. He hated the God of Israel. And he hated the children of Israel. And so this is not just talking about the size of a man, it's talking about the size of their demonic influence. A king of evil. Almost like had been seen before the flood of Noah. This ties right back to that. Some of the same words. It's sort of crazy. So we're talking about a spiritual influence here. And I know people get nervous when you talk about this. You know, a lot of Christians, they're so afraid of the devil, it's not even funny. You know, and they don't really want to know. You know, but shoot, you know, why wouldn't you want to know your enemy? There's no enemy of the United States bigger than the devil. Any country. So, but wild, you know, I mean, I've been around bulls that seemed wild, but they weren't. I worked in a livestock sale barn once, and this cowboy was throwing these rocks at the head of these Brahma bulls in this one pen. And they started jumping up and down, and they hit this metal gate, and I was standing right on the other side of that. It hit me in the head, knocked me out, and I was laying right in the aisle. They all came running out, and they're running up and down this aisle. It's about 50 yards long. And then I woke up and I see all these legs and feet running. They never stepped on me. But these were stockyard bulls. There might have been rodeo bulls, but they weren't. These things weren't mad at me. They were just mad. And then they made me get them all back in that pen. So then I had to go and walk to the other side and move them, and they all moved. So they were tame. They weren't wild. They were strong. They might have been 1,500, 2,000 pounds, but they weren't wild. Like I've said before, you know, what is the most dangerous animal in Africa? What would most people in the world say? A lion. But you know what it is. It's a Cape buffalo. Cape buffalo. Now, does that eat meat? No. But more people get hurt. In fact, at Yellowstone, what animal hurts more people than any other animal? Buffalo. Do they eat meat? No. They're just powerful. Powerful creatures. Like along the Nile, people would think it would be the crocodile would be the most vicious and deadly creature, but it's actually the hippopotamus that hurts more people. Isn't that nuts? You look at a hippo, you know, hungry hippo, you know, but you know, they'll go after people. They're wild animals. Cape buffalo can't be tamed. A buffalo can scarcely be tamed. You know, so somebody did research and they figured there's only 14 animals over 100 pounds that humans have ever tamed. 14. How many animals are there on Earth? And it's got to be something that will eat from a human, that will breed in confined quarters, and that has a temperament to live around people. You see, and it has to age relatively quickly, or there's no point. If it ages slower than a human, then there's no point in domesticating it because you can't use it for anything. You know that like the elephant from India can be tamed, but the elephants from Africa have never been tamed. Isn't that crazy? So it's just so we're talking about wild animals. They're untamable, but it has to be relating to people. There's some people that are totally untamable. It doesn't mean they're the wild kids on the street, the gangbangers or whatever. That's not what we're talking about. You see, we're talking about people who have opened up to a certain level of spiritual possession where they can no longer and will no longer allow themselves to be tamed by the Word of God. They can't. It's impossible. That's what David saw. Now, who around Jesus might have fit this description? What kind of people? The religious people. Sadly, the meanest people on earth are usually the most religious. So, verse 13, they gaped upon me with their mouths as a ravening and roaring lion. They gaped, they bit. You know, he didn't really get bit, but he got bit by words. You know, do words hurt? Yeah, I mean, these words, who did they manipulate to kill Jesus? The Romans. You think our country's ever been manipulated by another country to go fight for them? That probably has never happened, you know? So we'll get to that in just a few minutes about manipulation of people. But that's all orchestrated by seed of the serpent. Boom, boom, boom. Anytime somebody can move a whole body of people to die for them, that's not normal human behavior. That's a wild person. It's untamable. Somebody who's sold out to a whole nother entity. And David, a warrior prophet king, when speaking about the Messiah, describes this final attack. See, a ravening lion is a lion in a feeding frenzy. And remember how they just couldn't wait to kill Jesus? It's like a feeding frenzy. David, I mean, this is how David is describing these things. It's just tearing chunks off its victim. And it's amazing how verse 13 jumps from a wild herbivore to a wild carnivore. Both are dangerous. And now we're going to talk about the effects of the attack. Here's what happens when people who are born of the seed of the serpent, who've manipulated other people, here's how you feel. 14, I'm poured out like water. And all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax, and it's melted into the midst of my bowels, or it just makes you just shrink and just melt inside. That's how Jesus Christ was feeling. How do you get yourself back from that? You ever had your believing so low that you're ever getting out of that hole? Some people stay like that their whole life. They just can't get out of it. I was trying to find out if these scientists consider humans as tame or wild. You know, because we pretty much resist restraint. But the people who allow themselves to eat out of the food bowl of somebody else, you know, they allow themselves to be tamed. You know, so it's just a different angle of that. But you know, I'm totally drained. It feels like my bones are out of joint, and probably he did have his bones pulled out of joint. The heart of my mind is melted into my belly. I'm just sick. I mean, you ever had that feeling inside? It's like, I mean, it's just sour. It's copper. It's a horrible feeling. You're about to walk into something. That's how Jesus felt. So David felt this too. So this is not like watching your TV. Imagine being able to feel what the other person's really feeling. Well, God showed him this by revelation. Isn't that crazy? My strength is dried up like a potsherd, like just a piece of old broken pottery. And my tongue cleaveth to my jaws, and thou hast brought me into the dust of death. I'm so dry that my tongue sticks to my mouth. I'm right at the verge of death. Remember when Jesus said in John 19, he said, he didn't say fulfilled, he said, I thirst. So this is another fulfillment of a prophecy. God showed David that Jesus Christ was thirsty. I mean, I know what some of you know what thirsty is. I remember Texas, and our coaches would not allow us to drink water because they thought it would make us into pussies. So during practice, and it's over 100 degrees in August, which is nuts. And by the end of practice, you couldn't swallow anymore. You just had these little white things of spittle, at the corners of your mouth, and that's all there was. And so we'd run into the shower as fast as we could, and we'd just drink the shower, because it was the easiest way to get the most amount of water. But it's nutty. You see, I know what it's like to have no liquid anymore in the body. And so, it's I'm so dry, my tongue sticks to my mouth. See, the word dust, the dust of death, that gray like ash. And you remember how when all hell broke loose for Job, and Job, 10 kids got killed in one day. He got ransacked. He lost everything. Lost everything in one day, and he down and sat in the ashes. I feel like dying. Imagine losing one child, how bad that would feel. You've lost parents or grandparents, but imagine losing all 10 of your children at one time in one day. That was Job. And that's so in the East, when they would be, we're at that point where I'm ready to die, they would sit in the ashes. So that's what David is, me into the dust of death. And that's how the words made Jesus feel. They made him want to die. The manipulation of words. It wasn't just their words mocking him. They got the whole town stirred up. People were just walking by saying horrible things. Society. In fact, earlier in the Gospels, they had talked against Jesus so much that even Jesus' brothers and his mom thought he was crazy. It's an easy Bible study. It said they thought he was beside himself. Where did those words come from? These people. The woman who bore him one time, not at this time on the tree, but at one time even his mom, who an angel had spoken to, thought he was crazy. It's from words, folks. They manipulate. So that's what this is talking about here. Now we're going to talk about a physical attack. For the dogs have compassed me. The assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They pierced my feet. Now, does that sound anything like something that he's going through? David saw him with his hands and his feet, pierced. David saw the crucifixion. Now, dogs is also representing something else. Now, a dog, even if a dog has gone feral, and I've seen feral dogs when I was at the college I went to, they would make a big announcement on the loudspeaker, everybody stay inside. The feral dogs are loose. And there was a pack of feral dogs that would run across Stephen F. Austin, and they would attack the kids, the college kids. So they told us to get inside when they were there, and then they'd send people out to go kill these things, you see. But they were dangerous. And they were just people's dogs who got away and started running with the pack. Now, a feral dog will still eat out of a bowl. You see? And in a generation, if you had an offspring of one of those and you raise it in your house, is it going to be feral anymore? No, it's going to be just like a dog because that's their nature. So these are people who by nature aren't inherently evil, but they allow themselves to be manipulated by people born of the seed of the serpent. That's a dog. Who was that in Jesus' day? You said it earlier. The Romans. The dogs have compassed me. The assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They pierced my hands and feet. I wonder if David felt that. This is a reference to people who've recently opened up to evil or who are manipulated by somebody who's even more evil. See, the wild thing is usually if you watch the documentary, they might grab the back leg, bring the animal down, but then what does the next animal do, the wolf or the cat? They go for the throat. And then they eat it, right? A dog, if you ever seen a pack of dogs hunt, they don't hunt for food. They just hunt to kill. Like a 12-year-old boy with a BB gun. He doesn't eat the sparrows or the squirrels. He just kills them. That's dogs. They just kill for the joy of killing. So it's clear. Verse 16, they pierce my hands and feet. This is a song, remember. This is Psalm 22. It's Song 22. I was thinking it's right before Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. It's pretty crazy, the progression of these psalms. David knew, Mary and Joseph knew, even Jesus knew that his hands and feet would be pierced through someday. The Romans didn't crucify in 1000 BC when David saw this. There were no Romans. Not yet. I wonder what David saw by revelation. I was thinking, I wonder if he saw their equipment. He did. He saw the shield. He saw the helmet. He saw the swords. He saw the lance. He saw the shoes they wore. I'll show you the detail in just a minute. It'll blow your minds what David saw. If he saw this, he saw it all. God showed him something in the future. And this isn't even totally it yet. Verse 17, what did he look like? So now Jesus is reflecting on what he looked like, or David was. 17, I may tell all my bones, and they look out and stare upon me. Of course, do bones have eyes? No, so it makes it what? A figure of speech. Okay, so if your bones are looking at you, what does that mean? You can see them. You can see them. They probably pulled the meat off of his bones. Probably some bones were showing through, looking at me. Just like if I said, and my stomach's talking to me. What's that mean? I'm hungry. My dogs are barking. What would that mean? My feet hurt. We all have expressions. Well, they had them then too. Okay? And so my bones, they stare at me. 18, they part my garments among them and cast lots upon my vesture. Did that happen? Yes! They stripped Jesus Christ naked. You see? Then they nail him to this post. Then they set it up right. Punk! And he's in that hole. The clothes are laying there. Then they divide the clothes, and then they on one of them they cast lots. They gambled to get that nice robe. David saw this. Isn't that crazy? David saw them do this 1,000 years before. He saw those idiot soldiers. The lowest level of soldiers in the Roman army do this. The centurion just standing behind him, making sure the job was done, that they didn't cause any trouble. David saw this stuff. Now we're going to switch back to asking God for help. Verse 19, be not thou far from me, O Lord, my strength. Haste thee to help me. Let's get the move on, God. Deliver my soul from the sword, my darling, from the power of the dog. And this word darling here, he's not calling God darling. My darling means my one and only God. One and only God. Now, how many people have multiple gods? I would say most. They pray to anything. They'll go to anything to try to get their answer. You see, even some Christians have more than one God. Some of them have hundreds of gods. so one for every day. So it's sort of crazy. So deliver me from the sword, my darling, my one and only, from the power of the dog. And the dog represents the Romans here. And he calls God his one and only. Now see how David transitions from the word forsook in verse 1, where why hast thou forsaken me, to my one and only. Does that sound like God's forsaken him? No. It's a transition, folks. It's a transition. It's taking you from the depth of despair to great brilliance. The song is building to a crescendo. It mentions for the second time dog. It talks about the wild bull. Let me see here. Oh, verse 21. You'll love this. Save me from the lion's mouth, for thou hast heard me from the horns of the unicorn. Now, this isn't a magical unicorn from Saturday morning that walks on rainbows and poops Skittles. I mean, that's not what this is talking about, you see. And the word unicorn just means, in the Hebrew, wild bull. And you see horn, so it's not the one, special horn of a unicorn. I don't know why they translated it like that. It's a very poor translation, but it just means, again, wild bull. Thou hast heard me from the horns of the unicorn. And so he spoke out publicly for God in those last moments. Verse 22, I will declare thy name unto my brethren. In the midst of the congregation will I praise thee. Did Jesus Christ do that? Yep. Oh, yeah. 23, ye that fear the Lord, praise him. All ye the seed of Jacob, glorify him and fear him. All ye the seed of Israel. See, Jesus Christ speaks out for God his entire life while hanging there. So this started when he was a baby. And now and then David saw different points. I also wonder if the wild bulls of Bashan also reflects back to the temptation of Jesus Christ in the wilderness. Because it talks about the wild beasts that that hassled him those 40 days. It wasn't just those 3 temptations. It talks about the wild beasts that did it. Were those wild beasts spirits? So there's a lot to this. I wonder if David saw the temptation. Pretty crazy, because there was nobody but evil around Jesus when he was going through that temptation. The wild bulls of Bashan, giants of wickedness, or the ones who control the giants of wickedness. And so remember that God hears and never forsakes. Here's one of the final lessons here. Verse 24, for he hath not despised nor abhorred the affliction of the afflicted. So did God abhor? Did he turn his head away from people that were afflicted? No, this is an answer to that first verse. He goes, he didn't do that. Neither hath he hid his face. And he cried, what? He heard him. You see? So what a lot of people are taught about that, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? That's just what a person thinks when they're first starting to go through a problem. God, I need you now. And to this point where you just know in your heart, I know I'm going to be delivered. I'm going to have that job. I'm going to have that healing. I'm going to have that relationship. I'm going to have whatever you want. It's a progression. And I wonder in this, while he's singing this song, his mom was standing near him. I wonder if she sang it with him. And the people who were standing near him, don't you think they would have? If you were one of the people standing right next to God in a tune, and he's singing it loud and proud, It says he boomed it. You think others might have sang along? It's just funny. It doesn't say in the Bible. We don't know. Verse 25, seeing into the future. Now this is going to be different. My praise shall be of thee in the great congregation. I will pay my vows before them that fear him. 26, the meek shall eat. They shall praise the Lord that seek him. Your heart shall live forever. See, this is the future paradise that Jesus spoke of to that malefactor. David saw it. Jesus Christ saw it and spoke of it. The great congregation is some day in the future. That's when everybody's gathered together. Now, they didn't know about the gathering together when all Israel, all the just are gathered. You see, he's going to be. He's only going to be. He only can see himself around people that respect God. You know, verse 27. All the ends of the world shall remember and turn unto the Lord. Now, is all the world ever going to turn unto God that we see? Do a lot of people love Christianity today? I mean, there's a lot of people who do, but there's a lot more who don't, right? And if even aside from that, are there agnostics on earth today? And people who don't even believe there's a God? So could this mean in this day and time, or the day and time of Jesus Christ? It can't. All the ends of the world shall remember and turn unto the Lord. When will that happen? It's only after the judgment of the just. There is no more evil. When the devil has been eliminated from the equation, that's the source of our whole problem. I term it the Satan effect. If you can learn to control the Satan effect on your life, you can have dominion. You will lack nothing. You will lack no healing, no prosperity, nothing. But you have to learn to control it. Jesus, this psalm right here is showing you how. So you think this way. Why? Just take yourself through the progression of thought, which I'm not going to take the time to go back over right now. You see, all the ends of the world shall remember and turn unto the Lord, and all the kindreds of the nations shall worship before thee. Can that be now? No. Was it at Jesus Christ's time? Was it at David's time? No. For the kingdom is the Lord's, and he is a governor among the nations. What was that point? The future. Paradise. What's it really going to look like? You think that helped him too? The only time all the world will turn to God is after the judgment of the just and the unjust, and the devil is eliminated. A lot of Christians think, it'll be perfect after the gathering together. No, it won't. That's when the Antichrist is going to be unleashed. And all hell's going to break loose on earth. Never had been. All the Christians will be alive then, but they won't be on earth. Where will you be? I don't know. Maybe there we're going to be able to see everything on Pneumovision. You know, I don't know. 29. See, the devil can no longer perpetuate evil. He is the reason our lives are so hard. Jesus Christ saw that. He manipulates people born of the seed of the serpent. They manipulate the dogs of the earth, who in turn make our lives miserable. It's just one big mess, manipulation. But if you can see it, then it's easier to deal with it. 29, and they that be fat upon the earth shall eat. Now, being fat isn't good in our culture. But in a culture, there wasn't a lot of fat people in the Bible. And the few that were, they mention it. See, but now it's like, if someone you know, they're noticed. So it's sort of funny. The fact that and worship. Eat and worship. Eat and worship. Down to the dust shall bow before him, and none can keep alive his own soul. The people that are going to die in that second death, they're just going to be dead. They will not be able to stay alive, including the devil. Do you know the devil has an end? Hell is not for eternity. The Bible never says that. Who says that? It's just religion. There's no hell forever. Then there's no perfection. If there's hell, think about it. Could there be 100% perfection if there's still a hell and a devil and all these bad things going on and people burning and screaming right under your feet? That's ridiculous. Just some artist drew that, and all Christians just keep dipping their beak into the tar pit, and then they get stuck, one wing, and then another wing, then they get sucked under. They just become a fossil of who they once were. I'm tired of being a fossil. I'm tired of fossilized Christianity. Let's bring the life back into it. And this psalm right here shows people how. All the principles are there. We're not done yet. See, God will keep us alive forever. That's a great vision. Verse 30, 2 more verses. A seed shall serve him. A seed. It shall be accounted to the Lord for a generation. David didn't fully understand. He said there's some different kind of people that are going to be there. David had a glimpse. David had a glimpse. Be like after the gathering together. And it's different than what the Jews and other people are going to have. It's a glimpse. It's a seed. You know, what a progression of human thought. From brooding introspection to amazing deliverance in this song. Jesus really see into his future so that he could handle the now. David saw it too. Hebrews 12:2 states, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross and is set down at the right hand of God. God had to show him what his life was going to be like in the future, or he couldn't have lived like it. So much in the Bible that shows us our future. Let's learn that. Let's hang on to that. Who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. You see that real so many times in his mind, what he was going to have to go through, that it became second nature. The beat of that song was exactly right to match the intensity of the day, and the words were perfect. That this song was running through Jesus' head and out of his lips. See, this was part of Jesus' hope. It's a progeny that's born to serve God, or born again to serve God. Now the final verse, amplified because it's much clearer. They shall come and shall righteousness to a people yet to be born, that he hath done it, that it is finished. There is to announce or to expose or manifest his righteousness, his right way. Jesus said, I've accomplished my task. I fulfilled my calling. I've set things up for this new generation. And I can even see what I have done in my future job. And just before he dies, he loudly blurts out this song. This final verse of Psalm 22 is his final statement. It's also said in John 19. Jesus ended his life and the victory song knowing that it was finished.